Every morning, before the city truly woke up, the little cafe on the corner would start to hum with quiet life. The waitress was always there first, unlocking the doors, turning on the lights, and straightening every chair and table with careful precision. She had been working in this cafe for years, and the place had grown into more than just a workplace for her. It was almost like a second home. The smell of fresh coffee brewing and the gentle hum of the refrigerator and coffee machines made her feel calm, as if she could face anything the day would bring. Among the regulars, one old man caught her attention more than anyone else. He was small, frail, and walked slowly with the help of a cane. Every morning, like clockwork, he would arrive at exactly 7 o'clock, nod politely to the waitress, and choose the same corner table by the window. She never knew his name at first, and he never offered it. He wore simple, unassuming clothes, but there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. His eyes, gentle and kind, seemed to watch the world pass by without judgment, quietly taking it all in. At first, the waitress treated him like any other customer. She would greet him with a warm smile, ask if he wanted his usual coffee, and bring it to him within minutes. His order was always the same: black coffee, no sugar, and a small plate with a piece of toast or sometimes just a muffin. He never complained, never asked for more than what he needed, and always thanked her softly. But over time, she began to notice little things about him that made him different from other customers. He seemed to appreciate even the smallest gestures. When she adjusted his chair so it was just the right distance from the table, he would give her a subtle nod. When she refilled his water glass without being asked, he would smile briefly, eyes twinkling with a quiet gratitude. She noticed that he would sometimes sit and stare out the window for a long time, not reading the newspaper or fiddling with his phone, just looking at the world outside, and she felt a strange sense that he valued her presence simply because she was there to serve him. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The routine was comforting to both of them. She began to anticipate his needs before he even asked. If she saw him shiver, she would bring an extra napkin or adjust the heater near his table. If she noticed him squinting at the newspaper, she would quietly bring over a pair of reading glasses she kept behind the counter for moments like these. The old man, in turn, seemed to respond to her attentiveness with a quiet joy, a soft hum of contentment, or a nod of acknowledgement that let her know he noticed and appreciated her care. Over time, their small exchanges became meaningful. She learned when he preferred to sit quietly and when he wanted to talk a little. She learned that he had a fondness for classical music, and sometimes, when the cafe's radio played a soft piano melody, she would notice him tap his fingers lightly on the table, a subtle sign of enjoyment. He never asked for much attention, yet the way he looked at her when she brought his coffee or cleared his table showed a deep sense of trust and comfort. The waitress also began to observe patterns in his behavior that made her curious. Some days he seemed lost in thought, staring at nothing for what seemed like hours. Other days he would watch the other customers with a quiet amusement, a small smile forming as if he understood stories about people that no one else did. She wondered about his life, who he had loved, what he had achieved, and why someone who seemed so important would come to such a small cafe every morning just to sit quietly and drink coffee. Despite her curiosity, she never pried. She knew that some people were private, and respect mattered more than knowing every detail. Instead, she focused on the moments they shared. The gentle greetings, the small smiles, the careful way she placed his cup and plate in front of him. She found herself looking forward to these mornings, and in some way she felt that the old man did too. There was a rhythm to it, a silent understanding that went beyond words. One chilly morning, as frost clung to the window panes, she noticed that he looked particularly weary. His hands shook slightly as he lifted his coffee, and he seemed to move more slowly than usual. Without thinking, she went to him with a cup of hot water, carefully warmed, and a soft blanket she kept for emergencies. She draped it over his shoulders, and he looked up at her, eyes glistening just a little, a soft smile breaking through his tired expression. "Thank you," he murmured, barely above a whisper, but it was enough to warm her heart. It was moments like these that made her realize that small gestures could mean more than grand actions. Other customers noticed their connection too. Sometimes they would glance over and see the way she attended to him, the way he responded with such quiet appreciation. Some of them thought it was unusual, but she didn't care. To her, it was simple human kindness. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about being present, about making someone's day a little easier, a little brighter. And the old man, with his quiet dignity, seemed to embody all that she had hoped to give to others through her work. On weekends, the cafe was busier, but she always made sure his table was ready and waiting. She would clear away other customers, if possible, to give him the peace he seemed to crave. Sometimes, she would catch him watching her from his corner table, a small smile on his face, almost as if he were acknowledging that she understood him in ways no one else did. There was a subtle comfort in that, a silent communication that required no words. Even though she didn't know much about him, she felt connected to him in a way that went beyond the usual customer-server relationship. She would sometimes imagine stories about his life, wondering what experiences had shaped such a gentle, quiet man. She thought about how he might have been in his younger days, what dreams he had chased, and what joys and sorrows he had carried with him. And yet, he never spoke of these things, choosing instead to share his presence, a small, meaningful part of his daily life, with her. One rainy morning, as droplets traced lines down the cafe window, she watched him enter, umbrella in hand, moving slowly, cautiously. She hurried to his table, drying the surface and making it cozy for him. He nodded appreciatively, and she noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. There was a heaviness about him that day, a quiet weariness. She poured his coffee, brought his toast, and sat briefly across from him, not speaking, just sharing the silence. And in that silence, there was a connection stronger than words could express. Over time, she began to think of him not just as a customer but as a friend of sorts, someone whose mornings she had become a part of, and who had become a part of hers. She looked forward to seeing him, to sharing small moments of human connection in a world that often felt rushed and uncaring. And in turn, she sensed that he looked forward to her presence, to the quiet attentiveness she offered every day without expectation or reward. It was in these small, ordinary moments that something extraordinary existed. The old man didn't need grand gestures, and she didn't seek recognition. What they shared was simple, human, and profound. Every nod, every smile, every careful placement of a cup and plate was a language all their own. And though they never spoke of it directly, there was an unspoken understanding that their mornings together mattered, that they had created a small sanctuary within the walls of the little cafe. As the days continued, the waitress found herself reflecting on the meaning of kindness and connection. She realized that it wasn't about money, status, or recognition. It was about being present, noticing, caring in the smallest of ways. And in the old man's quiet appreciation, she found a reflection of her own humanity, a reminder that small acts could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, catching the dust in golden beams, the old man looked up at her, eyes brighter than usual. He didn't say much, just a simple, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of gratitude that made her feel seen in a way few people ever had. And in that moment, she understood that what they shared was more than a routine. It was a connection built on trust, respect, and quiet understanding, a bond that made both their mornings richer and more meaningful. As part one of their story came to a close, the cafe continued its quiet hum, the coffee machine whirred, and the waitress prepared for another day. She didn't know what the future would bring, nor did she care much. For now, the small, ordinary moments with the old man were enough. Each morning a small chapter in a story that was unfolding slowly, gently, and beautifully. Their connection was simple, human, and real, and in a world full of chaos and uncertainty, that was more than enough. The old man continued to come to the cafe every morning, and over time, the connection between him and the waitress grew deeper, even if neither of them spoke about it. She began to notice patterns in his behavior that made her mornings more interesting. Some days he would arrive carrying a small notebook, flipping through pages filled with neat handwriting, though she never asked what it was for. Other days, he would simply stare out the window, lost in thought, as if he were carrying the weight of many years in those quiet moments. She learned to recognize his moods, and with each morning, her attentiveness seemed to bring him a subtle sense of comfort. Her daily gestures became more refined. She would bring his coffee a little earlier when she noticed the way his hands trembled with cold. She always made sure the muffin on his plate was perfectly toasted and cut into manageable pieces so that he could enjoy it without struggling. If the cafe was busy, she would gently guide other customers around him, ensuring he had the peaceful corner he preferred. She even began to remember little details he mentioned in passing. One day he had said he liked the sound of rain on the roof, and the next time it rained, she made a point to place his table near the window so he could see and hear it better. He noticed, and a quiet smile would play across his lips, a small acknowledgement that touched her heart in a way words never could. The cafe itself became a part of their connection. She started arriving a little earlier to prepare the space just for him, adjusting the lighting, setting the tables neatly, and ensuring the air was warm. She knew he liked order and comfort. Sometimes, when she was wiping down the counter or straightening chairs, he would watch her quietly, and she felt a strange sense that he appreciated the care she took not just with his coffee, but with the entire environment around him. Over the weeks, she began to notice small signs that he looked forward to their interactions. He would nod to her before she reached his table, or he would give a small smile as if he knew she had anticipated his preferences that day. Sometimes he would engage in brief conversation, asking her about her day or commenting softly on the weather. These moments were rare but meaningful. She could see the weight of loneliness lift from his shoulders just a little, and that was enough to make her feel that her work mattered beyond the ordinary duties of a waitress. She also observed subtle quirks about him. His eyes seemed to light up when he heard classical music playing softly in the background, and she sometimes found him tapping his fingers on the table in rhythm with the melody. He preferred to eat quietly but seemed to enjoy small shared moments when she briefly joined him, perhaps while refilling his water or adjusting his chair. They did not need long conversations. The unspoken understanding between them created a comfort that neither had expected. She felt a growing warmth in her chest, a realization that even the simplest acts of care could form a bond stronger than words. Other staff began to notice the attention she gave to him. Some were curious, some even a little envious, but she did not mind. She had learned that small acts of kindness were valuable in ways no one could measure. The old man's presence had brought a sense of purpose to her mornings that went beyond the routine of work. It was not just about serving coffee or cleaning tables. It was about being present, noticing, and creating a small space of comfort for someone who, by all appearances, had lived a life full of accomplishments but perhaps little genuine human connection. There were moments when she wondered about his past. He seemed to carry a quiet sadness along with a calm dignity, as if he had lived through both joy and hardship. She imagined stories about his younger days, thinking about what dreams he might have chased and what challenges he might have faced. And yet, he never spoke of these things. She respected his privacy, sensing that the bond they shared did not need words. Their connection was built on simple, thoughtful gestures, and the shared understanding of two people acknowledging each other's presence and humanity. Some mornings were particularly difficult for him. His movements were slower, his hands weaker, and he seemed tired even after the short walk to the cafe. She made small adjustments without asking, always noticing the tiniest details. She would heat his chair slightly with a cushion, adjust the lighting if his eyes seemed strained, and bring a spoon or napkin at the right moment. He noticed, and his eyes would soften with gratitude, a silent expression that spoke louder than anything he could say. One morning, it was raining heavily, and the streets were slippery. She arrived early and found him standing under the awning outside, waiting patiently. She rushed out with an umbrella and guided him inside, making sure he did not slip or stumble. Once inside, she dried him off, adjusted his coat, and poured his coffee with a warmth that matched the heater in the cafe. He looked at her, and for a moment, she thought she saw the faintest hint of emotion in his eyes, a mix of relief and quiet appreciation that made her heart swell. It was in these small, everyday interactions that she realized the depth of their connection. The old man, despite his quiet demeanor, seemed to respond to her attentiveness in subtle ways. He would occasionally leave a note on the table, a simple message of thanks or a kind word. Sometimes, he would ask her how she was, showing an interest that was rare from someone who rarely spoke of personal matters. She began to look forward to these small moments, not for the words themselves, but for the human connection they represented. Each morning became a gentle ritual of understanding, care, and mutual respect. Over time, she noticed that her own perspective on life was changing. Watching him face each day with patience and dignity, despite his age and physical challenges, taught her the importance of empathy and attentiveness. She began to see her work in a new light, realizing that even small acts of kindness, repeated consistently, could have a profound impact on someone's life. The cafe was no longer just a place of work. It had become a space where meaningful human connections could grow, nurtured by thoughtful attention and care. Sometimes, when the cafe was quiet and the morning sunlight spilled through the windows, she would watch him sip his coffee slowly, eyes closed for a moment, savoring the warmth and flavor. She would glance at him from across the room, feeling a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her efforts made his mornings a little brighter, a little easier. And in those moments, she felt a deep sense of purpose, a feeling that transcended the ordinary tasks of a waitress. She was contributing to someone's happiness, in small but significant ways. Even when other customers were present, she always found a way to make him feel special. She would serve him first, ensure his table was clear, and attend to his needs before attending to the bustle around him. It was not a show or a performance. It was simply a matter of attentiveness and care. He seemed to sense this and responded with a quiet nod or a soft smile, gestures that carried more meaning than words ever could. Over time, she began to think of him not just as a customer but as a friend, someone whose mornings she had become a part of, and who had become a part of hers. Her colleagues sometimes asked why she paid so much attention to a single customer, but she never explained. They could not see the subtle moments, the small gestures, or the quiet expressions of gratitude that made each morning meaningful. For her, it was enough to know that she had made a difference in someone's day, even in ways that no one else could measure. It was a lesson in humility, kindness, and the profound impact of consistent care. One particularly cold morning, he arrived looking more tired than usual. She quickly adjusted his chair, warmed his coffee, and placed a soft cloth under his hands to keep them from the cold table. He looked at her, eyes glistening slightly, and whispered a simple thank you. It was a small phrase, yet it carried immense weight. She realized that these small moments, repeated day after day, were building a connection that went beyond service. It was about human attention, empathy, and the unspoken understanding that they were sharing something meaningful. In the weeks that followed, the bond continued to grow. She noticed how he seemed to relax in her presence, how his mornings felt lighter and more manageable because of the small kindnesses she offered. And she, in turn, felt a growing sense of fulfillment, understanding that her work had meaning beyond the ordinary. She had created a small sanctuary in the cafe, a place where someone felt seen, cared for, and valued, and in doing so, she had also enriched her own life. The connection between the waitress and the old man became a gentle, unspoken rhythm in their lives. Each morning, she anticipated his needs, and he responded with subtle gestures of appreciation. The quiet smiles, the careful adjustments, the attentive service. All of it created a bond that was deeply human, grounded in respect, empathy, and shared moments of quiet understanding. These mornings, though simple, became extraordinary in their own way, reminding both of them that small acts of care could carry immense meaning and transform the ordinary into something truly special. The morning started like any other. The little cafe had its usual quiet hum, and the waitress arrived early, making sure everything was perfect. She unlocked the doors, turned on the coffee machines, and straightened the tables. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of baked muffins. It was calm and familiar, the same as it had been for years. She liked these quiet mornings, when she could prepare for the day without rushing, and when she could anticipate the arrival of the old man, whose presence had become a comforting part of her routine. He usually arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, and she expected him to walk slowly through the door, cane in hand, nodding politely before settling into his usual corner by the window. But this morning was different. As the clock approached 7, the sound of several cars pulling up outside caught her attention. Through the window, she saw 4 tall, serious-looking men step out, dressed in dark suits. Their expressions were sharp and cautious, and they moved with a precision that made her heart beat a little faster. She immediately knew that something unusual was about to happen. The old man followed closely behind them, walking slowly but steadily. He looked the same as always, calm and composed, yet there was an unmistakable air of authority about him now that she had never seen before. The bodyguards flanked him on both sides, their eyes scanning the cafe as if protecting him from any unseen threat. Behind them came 2 more men in suits, carrying briefcases and speaking quietly to each other. She realized with a jolt that they were lawyers, professionals moving with purpose. The sight was intimidating, and the familiar, gentle routine she had grown used to felt suddenly fragile. Despite her surprise, the waitress did her best to stay calm and professional. She wiped her hands on her apron and approached the old man's table, offering her usual greeting. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice steady even as her heart raced. The old man nodded at her, a small, reassuring smile on his face. It was a smile that told her everything was all right, even if she didn't understand the full picture yet. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had done nothing wrong and that her care for him had always been genuine. The bodyguards positioned themselves strategically around the cafe, their presence imposing but quiet. They did not speak unless necessary, and their eyes constantly moved, scanning the room with sharp attention. Some customers had started to notice, and whispers filled the air. The atmosphere had shifted from calm and familiar to tense and watchful. The waitress felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. She had never experienced anything like this in her years at the cafe. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the old man's coffee and toast on the table, careful to make everything perfect despite the sudden change in the room. The old man's lawyers approached her next, speaking in low, measured tones. "We need to speak with you privately," one of them said, his voice firm but polite. The waitress felt her pulse quicken. She had no idea what was happening. Were they upset with her? Was there a problem? She nodded slowly, following them to a quiet corner of the cafe, careful not to spill anything or draw attention to herself. The bodyguards remained near the old man, keeping a protective distance but maintaining a watchful presence. In the quiet corner, the lawyers explained the situation. Their words were precise, careful, and professional. The old man had spoken highly of her, they said, describing how she had treated him with kindness and attentiveness every morning for years. Her small gestures, her care, and her genuine interest in his comfort had not gone unnoticed. He wanted to express his gratitude in a significant way, they said, and they were there to ensure it was handled properly and respectfully. The waitress blinked, stunned. She had never expected anything like this. She had simply done her job, caring for him as any thoughtful person would. She felt a rush of emotions, disbelief, humility, and a quiet joy. Her hands, which had been tense moments before, relaxed slightly. She could hardly believe that her small acts of kindness had been seen, appreciated, and considered meaningful enough to warrant attention from such important people. The old man, she realized, had quietly observed her every day, recognizing her patience, her thoughtfulness, and her ability to make his mornings brighter and easier. It was a moment that made her feel valued in a way she had never experienced before. Meanwhile, the old man sat at his usual table, his demeanor calm and composed. He occasionally glanced toward the corner where she was speaking with his lawyers, offering a small nod and a reassuring smile. It was a reminder that his gratitude was genuine, that he had noticed her efforts, and that he wanted her to understand how much her care had meant to him. The bodyguards remained vigilant, but their presence now seemed less intimidating and more protective, as if they were guardians of a moment that had deep personal significance. As the lawyers continued to speak, They explained that the old man wanted to offer her a meaningful opportunity. It was not just a simple tip or a small gift. It was a chance to change her life in a way that she had likely never imagined. They emphasized that it was entirely up to her whether she would accept it, but they assured her that it was a sincere offer, made out of genuine appreciation for her years of consistent care and attentiveness. She listened carefully, her mind racing to comprehend the situation. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, it filled her with a warmth she had never felt before. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the years she had spent in the cafe, the long mornings, the early hours, and the countless customers she had served. She had always taken pride in her work, but this recognition was unlike anything she had expected. She realized that her dedication, her patience, and her genuine kindness had made a difference in someone's life, and that difference was being acknowledged in a profound and tangible way. It was a reminder that even the smallest gestures, repeated consistently over time, could have an impact far beyond what she had imagined. The old man's lawyers paused, giving her a moment to absorb what they had said. She felt a mixture of gratitude, humility, and disbelief. She thought of all the mornings she had spent attending to him, of the subtle gestures she had made without thinking, and of the quiet smiles they had shared. She realized that those moments had been meaningful not just to him, but to herself as well. They had created a connection, a bond built on trust, respect, and shared humanity. And now, that bond was being recognized in a way that was both unexpected and deeply touching. When the conversation ended, she returned to the old man's table, her heart still racing but filled with a quiet joy. He looked at her, eyes bright, and gave a small nod, a gesture that spoke volumes. She smiled back, feeling a sense of connection that was stronger than ever. The cafe had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer just a place of work. It was a space where meaningful human connections were acknowledged, celebrated, and cherished. Throughout the rest of the morning, the bodyguards remained near, but their presence was less intimidating now. Customers whispered among themselves, curious about the unusual gathering. But the waitress focused on her work, attending to the old man with the same care and attention she always had. She realized that her actions, her dedication, and her genuine concern for his comfort had created a moment that would be remembered for a lifetime. It was a powerful reminder of the impact that simple, thoughtful gestures could have, and it filled her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. As the morning wore on, she noticed small details that made her smile. The old man seemed lighter, more at ease, as if the recognition of his gratitude had lifted a weight from his shoulders. She observed the subtle interactions between the lawyers and the bodyguards, noting how professional and respectful they were in handling the situation. And she reflected on her own journey, from the early mornings and long hours to this unexpected moment of acknowledgement and appreciation. It was a testament to the power of kindness, consistency, and genuine care. By the time the cafe began to fill with the usual mid-morning crowd, the unusual visitors had left, taking with them a sense of formality and purpose. The old man remained at his table, quietly enjoying his coffee and toast, a small smile playing on his lips. The waitress continued her work, attending to him and the other customers, but she carried with her a new sense of understanding and appreciation. She knew that her actions, though simple and often unnoticed, had made a real difference in someone's life. And that knowledge, that quiet acknowledgement, was more valuable than anything else she could have imagined. The morning passed, and the cafe returned to its usual rhythm. Yet, the events of that day remained etched in her mind. She understood now that her care and attention had not only been seen but valued in a profound way. The old man's gratitude, expressed through his lawyers and bodyguards, had created a moment that was both humbling and uplifting. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness, when offered consistently and with genuine intention, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that were both unexpected and deeply meaningful. As she cleared the tables, refilled the coffee, and straightened the chairs, she carried with her a sense of pride and fulfillment. The connection she had built with the old man was no longer just a quiet routine. It was a bond recognized and appreciated in a tangible, lasting way. And in that recognition, She found a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of the power of human connection, and a quiet joy that would stay with her for the days, months, and years to come. After the unexpected visit from the lawyers and bodyguards, the cafe felt quieter than usual the next morning. The old man arrived as he always did, moving slowly but steadily to his corner table. The waitress noticed a faint smile on his face, one that seemed to carry a mix of anticipation and reassurance. She greeted him as usual, placing his coffee and toast before him with care. Yet, there was a sense in the air that this morning would be different. The usual routine carried an undercurrent of significance, a feeling that something important was about to unfold. When the cafe was quiet enough, the old man motioned for the waitress to come over. He spoke softly, in a voice that was gentle yet carried a quiet authority. She listened intently, sensing that whatever he had to say would be meaningful. He began by expressing his gratitude for the care and attention she had shown him over the years. He told her that in a world filled with rushed mornings and impersonal interactions, her kindness had stood out. Each morning she had been present, attentive and thoughtful, and those small gestures had made his days brighter and more bearable. He explained that her actions had given him comfort in a way that few others had, creating a human connection he had long thought impossible. The waitress felt a swell of emotions: humility, surprise, and quiet joy. She had never expected such recognition. She had simply done what she felt was right, treating him with respect and care, without expectation of reward. Yet here he was acknowledging her in a way that felt profoundly meaningful. The old man's words were sincere and deliberate, and she realized that every small act she had performed had not gone unnoticed. She felt a warmth in her chest, a deep sense of satisfaction that was difficult to put into words. He then shared a part of his life that she had never known. He was a reclusive man of considerable means, someone who had spent decades building wealth and influence. Despite this, he had rarely allowed anyone into his personal life. Few people had earned his trust, and fewer still had seen him as a human being rather than a figure of status. But she had. In her quiet, thoughtful way, she had shown him genuine care without interest in his wealth or position. This was something rare, and he wanted her to know that it mattered to him deeply. The old man's expression softened as he spoke of his intentions. He explained that he wanted to ensure that her kindness was acknowledged in a meaningful way. He had asked his lawyers to visit her, to make an offer that reflected the significance of her actions. It was not a small gesture or a simple tip. It was a recognition that had the power to change her life. The lawyers were there to handle the details, to ensure that the process was respectful and professional. Her initial shock was evident, but he reassured her with a quiet smile that she had nothing to fear. The decision was entirely hers. She took a moment to process what she was hearing. Her mind raced through the years she had spent in the cafe, the countless mornings, and the subtle gestures of care that she had offered without thought. She realized that those ordinary moments had created an extraordinary connection. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts, performed consistently and with genuine intention, could have a profound impact on someone else's life. She felt a sense of humility, understanding that what she had done was meaningful beyond her own expectations. The old man continued, describing how her attentiveness had brought him comfort and companionship. He mentioned the mornings when she adjusted his chair, refilled his water, and remembered small details about his preferences. He spoke of the quiet moments they shared, the unspoken understanding that had grown between them, and how her presence had made his mornings something to look forward to. Her eyes filled with tears as she listened, realizing that these simple interactions had been deeply valued. It was a moment of profound human connection, one that transcended words. He then explained the offer he had asked his lawyers to present. It was a chance for her to improve her life, to pursue opportunities she might not have otherwise had. The details were carefully laid out by the lawyers, who spoke with professionalism and respect. They emphasized that it was a gesture of gratitude, not a requirement or an obligation. She could accept it or decline it as she saw fit. The weight of the offer was immense, and she felt both excitement and apprehension. It was an unexpected turn, a moment that had the potential to transform her future. As she listened, she reflected on her life up to this point. The early mornings, the long hours, and the dedication to her work had all led to this moment. She realized that her patience, kindness, and genuine care had created an impact far beyond the cafe's walls. It was a powerful reminder that human actions, no matter how small, could ripple outward in ways that were often unseen but deeply significant. She felt a mix of gratitude, humility, and quiet joy, understanding that her daily efforts had mattered in a way she had never imagined. The old man's eyes met hers, and she felt a connection that went beyond words. He had trusted her, valued her presence, and now wanted to honor her in a meaningful way. She felt a sense of awe, realizing that her small, consistent acts of kindness had been seen and appreciated in a way that few people ever experience. It was a lesson in the power of genuine care, in the importance of human connection, and in the unexpected ways that life can reward those who act with empathy and thoughtfulness. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as the lawyers outlined the next steps. It was a formal process, but it was clear that the old man's intentions were sincere. He wanted to ensure that she was recognized and that her life could be positively impacted by her consistent kindness. The offer was substantial, but more importantly, it represented acknowledgement, respect, and gratitude. She felt a deep sense of honor, realizing that her daily actions had created a meaningful bond that was now being acknowledged in a significant and lasting way. As the conversation concluded, she returned to the old man's table, feeling a mix of emotions that were difficult to express. He smiled at her, a quiet, knowing smile that conveyed trust, appreciation, and warmth. She smiled back, understanding that the connection they shared was profound and meaningful. The cafe, once just a place of work, had become a space of human connection, where kindness and attentiveness had created bonds that could not be measured by money or status. It was a space where genuine care had lasting impact. Throughout the morning, she attended to the old man with her usual care, but now there was a sense of understanding and appreciation that permeated the air. The other customers noticed the subtle change, though they did not know the details. The waitress felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that her actions had created a meaningful impact on someone else's life. It was a reminder that genuine kindness, offered consistently and without expectation, could transform lives in ways that were often unseen but deeply significant. She reflected on the years she had spent in the cafe, the countless mornings of attentive service, and the small gestures that had created a profound connection. She realized that her efforts had mattered, not just to the old man, but to herself as well. The recognition she had received was humbling, yet it filled her with joy and a sense of fulfillment. It was a reminder that human connection, empathy, and genuine care were powerful forces that could create lasting impact in unexpected ways. As the morning progressed, the cafe returned to its usual rhythm. The old man enjoyed his coffee and toast, and she attended to him with her usual attentiveness. Yet, the awareness of his gratitude and the significance of his offer lingered in her mind. She understood that her daily actions, performed with care and consistency, had created a bond that was meaningful and lasting. It was a moment of recognition, appreciation, and profound human connection that would stay with her for the rest of her life. By the time the cafe became busy with other customers, she had a quiet sense of peace and fulfillment. She realized that her work, though often routine, had created an extraordinary connection with the old man. It was a connection built on trust, empathy, and genuine care, and it had been acknowledged in a way that few people ever experience. She carried with her a sense of pride and joy, understanding that her kindness and attentiveness had created something truly meaningful. The old man remained at his table, quietly enjoying his morning, while she continued her work. She knew that the bond they shared was now stronger than ever, grounded in mutual respect, appreciation, and understanding. It was a reminder that small acts of kindness, offered consistently and with genuine intention, could have a profound and lasting impact on someone's life. And in that realization, she found a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and joy that would stay with her forever. After the revelation from the old man and his lawyers, the waitress felt a mixture of emotions she could hardly describe. For years, She had gone about her mornings in the cafe, focused on her work and the small ways she could bring comfort to the old man. She had never imagined that her simple acts of care could lead to something so significant. Now, she understood that every thoughtful gesture, every attentive moment, had mattered in ways she could not have predicted. The gratitude she felt, and the recognition she had received, was overwhelming but deeply rewarding. The first days after the meeting were quiet yet filled with reflection. She arrived at the cafe with a new sense of purpose, knowing that her dedication had been noticed and appreciated in a way that would change her life. She moved about the space with care, her attention to detail heightened by the knowledge that the old man's offer was sincere. Even the simple act of preparing coffee, setting the tables, and greeting customers carried more meaning now. She understood that the work she had always done with love and patience was valued far beyond what she had imagined. The old man continued his daily visits, though now there was a subtle difference in the atmosphere. He seemed lighter, more at ease, as if acknowledging the connection they had formed had lifted a weight from him. He would occasionally smile at her with a quiet knowing, a gesture that conveyed trust, appreciation, and a deep sense of shared understanding. The cafe, which had always been a place of work and routine, now felt like a space of recognition, respect, and meaningful human connection. As the days passed, the old man's offer became a reality. The lawyers had carefully guided her through the process, ensuring that everything was handled professionally and respectfully. She found herself with opportunities she had never dreamed of, financial security, and a new sense of independence. Yet, amidst all of this, she remained grounded, remembering the lessons she had learned from the simple moments spent with the old man in the quiet corner of the cafe. It was not the wealth or recognition that mattered most. It was the connection, the shared humanity, and the knowledge that her actions had genuinely touched someone's life. The change in her circumstances allowed her to pursue long-held dreams. She could consider further education, explore new ventures, or simply enjoy a life less burdened by financial stress. But more importantly, she carried forward the understanding that kindness, attentiveness, and genuine care had power. It was a lesson that transcended wealth, status, or recognition. It was about being present for someone else, noticing their needs, and responding with empathy and thoughtfulness. The old man had shown her that the simplest actions, performed consistently and with sincerity, could create profound and lasting impact. Her interactions with the old man continued to be special. Even though she now had security and options she had never imagined, she remained dedicated to him, serving his morning coffee with the same care and attention as always. The relationship had evolved into something deeper, a mutual respect and understanding that went beyond service. He valued her not for what she could receive, but for who she was and the humanity she had shown him every day. She realized that their connection had been the foundation of all that had changed in her life. The cafe became a place of reflection for her. Watching the old man sip his coffee, read the newspaper, or simply sit quietly by the window reminded her of the importance of small, meaningful gestures. She thought of the years spent attending to him, the countless mornings, and the moments of empathy and attentiveness that had seemed ordinary at the time, but had created a bond that transformed her life. She carried these memories with her, understanding that they represented the essence of human connection. Trust, care, and the quiet power of consistent kindness. Even the regular customers noticed a subtle change. The warmth and confidence she now carried seemed to brighten the space. She moved through the cafe with a sense of ease, attending to each person with attentiveness, yet also sharing an aura of calm assurance that came from knowing she had made a meaningful difference. Her colleagues observed the respect and subtle admiration she had earned, though they did not know the full story. For her, it was enough to continue acting with empathy and care, knowing that those values had always mattered most. The old man, too, seemed to change in small ways. He no longer appeared as weighed down by solitude or weariness. The connection they shared, now openly acknowledged, had brought him comfort and a sense of companionship that went beyond words. He would occasionally share brief stories, anecdotes from his life, or quiet reflections, and she would listen attentively, appreciating the trust he placed in her. Their relationship had evolved into one of mutual respect, care, and understanding that transcended routine, creating a bond that was rare and deeply human. She found herself reflecting on the lessons of her journey. The mornings spent serving coffee, adjusting chairs, refilling water, and remembering small details had created more than just good service. They had built a bridge between two lives. That bridge had carried her to a new chapter, providing recognition, opportunity, and a profound understanding of the power of kindness. She understood that true impact often came not from grand gestures, but from consistent, thoughtful actions performed with sincerity and attention. In the quiet moments, she would think of the old man's eyes, the faint smiles, the gentle nods of acknowledgement. Those were the moments that had mattered most, the small but profound signs that her presence was meaningful. She realized that these gestures of humanity, repeated over time, had created a legacy of care and connection. The recognition she had received was significant, but it was the bond itself, the shared understanding and trust that held the deepest value. As weeks turned into months, she continued to attend to the old man, though now with a different perspective. She understood that her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined, yet she remained humble, grateful, and grounded. She carried forward the lessons learned from their interactions, applying them not only to her work but to her life as a whole. The simple acts of attentiveness, empathy, and care had demonstrated a power she had never fully realized, and she now approached every moment with a renewed sense of purpose. The cafe became a place where meaningful connections were nurtured. She observed other customers, noticing the small ways they interacted, and she found joy in applying the lessons she had learned. The old man's influence, though subtle, had shaped her approach to life, teaching her that every action mattered, that every gesture could touch someone's life in ways that might never be fully known. She carried this awareness with her, transforming not only her own life but also the lives of those around her. Even with the changes in her life, she remained committed to the values that had guided her from the beginning. She continued to arrive early, prepare the cafe, and attend to the old man with the same care and thoughtfulness. She knew that the recognition and opportunities she had received were the result of consistent effort, attentiveness, and genuine humanity. And she understood that those qualities, once cultivated, could create ripples far beyond what one could ever imagine. Over time, she found ways to use her new opportunities to enhance her life while remaining true to the principles that had brought her this far. She pursued education, explored new ventures, and invested in her future, all while maintaining the human connection that had been at the heart of her journey. The lessons of kindness, attentiveness, and empathy were now ingrained in her approach to life, guiding her choices and actions in ways that were both practical and deeply meaningful. The old man's presence remained a constant in her mornings, a reminder of the bond that had transformed her life. Their interactions were simple yet profound. Coffee poured, chairs adjusted, small details remembered, and gentle words shared. These acts, repeated consistently over time, had created a connection that was both rare and extraordinary. She cherished these moments, understanding that the true gift lay not in recognition or opportunity, but in the shared humanity and trust that had been built over years of quiet attentiveness. As the story reached its natural conclusion, the waitress reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the first morning she had served him coffee to the recognition and opportunities she now received, every step had been shaped by kindness, attentiveness, and genuine care. She had learned that small, consistent gestures could create meaningful impact, that human connection was both powerful and transformative, and that recognition, while gratifying, was secondary to the value of the bond itself. She looked at the old man, sipping his coffee, eyes calm and content, and smiled. The journey they had shared had changed both of their lives in quiet, profound ways. The cafe, once a simple place of work, had become a sanctuary of human connection, a space where kindness and attentiveness were acknowledged and cherished. And in that understanding, she found lasting fulfillment, purpose, and joy, knowing that the small acts she had offered every morning had created a ripple of positive impact that would endure far beyond what she could ever see.